Welcome to September. That's moving on. Stand and let's worship.
I can't remember what year it is, but it was in the summer, and Nancy and I and the kids were at Ridgecrest Conference Center. I was there for 2 weeks. I taught back-to-back Sunday school weeks on cults and world religions and everything. And I had some time off, and Nancy was at a seminar. The kids were doing their thing because they had things for the kids. And I went down to Black Mountain, North Carolina to go to a used bookstore because I love used bookstores. I can just find all kinds of things in there I need and can't live without. And as I walked into the door, I bumped into this lady, and she had an armful of books, and I knocked them all to the ground. And I helped her pick them up, and I apologized profusely because I just wasn't looking where I was going. I was busy looking at everything else. And she was very gracious to me, very kind. And she went on. I kept thinking, oh, I know that woman. And then it hit me. I had just nearly knocked down Ruth Bell Green. Yeah, I just nearly knocked her down. And I walked in and in the bookstore owner was laughing, and I said, "Was that really who?" He said, "Yeah, that was really her." I didn't get to meet her, didn't get to talk to her. She was gone. I went back outside looking for her. But she said, if you haven't read your bulletin, if there are any tears shed in heaven, they're going to be shed over all the answers to prayer for which no one ever bothered to ask. Isn't that true? I think that's true. I think we're sometimes scared to ask God for stuff. We're scared to ask God for more money. We're scared to ask God for healing. We're scared to ask God for people to come to draw people to our church. We're scared to ask God to lead people to be saved. We're scared of all those. We don't ask those things because we're not sure what that's going to involve, because his answer may be, yes, I have those people waiting and you need to go see them. And here they are. We don't know how that's going to be, but I'm just amazed at that is true. I hope you'll read that and ponder on that. Guys, we have breakfast next Saturday morning at 9 o'clock at Kurt's. You'll get emails to that as well as on Facebook. On the Sunday the 16th, I hope you, look at here, read my list. Sunday the 16th, if you were on a committee, new, past, present, 5:30, Sunday night, right over there in the annex, we're going to have all committee planning session. All committee planning session. And you'll be meeting your other committee members. If you're on more than one committee, we'll move you around. Choir practice begins Wednesday night. Wednesday night at 7:15-ish. But come on and sing with us, even if you thought maybe I didn't go to the listening, but yeah, you're still welcome to come sing with us. We're going to join 200, there's going to be a whole bunch of 5 other choirs, and I don't know how many voices, but it's going to be fun. And but we're going to start getting ready. Starting Wednesday night at 6:30, we're going to be looking at 2nd and 3rd John. That's the 2 Johns that almost nobody studies anymore. I don't know why, but they've been considered scripture since the end of the 1st century, about the beginning of the 2nd. We're going to look at 2nd and 3rd John. We need one more Sunday school, preschool worker, or Benny's going to have to do it. Mm-hmm. Yeah, you only have to do it once a month, okay? So we need one more, and there's going to be some training coming out soon for all those workers, and just reminding you to be a few minutes early if you're on the schedule, and stay till after 10 o'clock in your classroom and make sure everybody's there. And Wanda has put up with Bob 61 years tomorrow. A couple of prayer concerns. Just let me share these with you real quick, and I'll try to remind you. Kathy's, Theo's mom is in the hospital with double pneumonia. Theo is at the Oaks in Limestone, and Nancy and I are dropping by after lunch today to see them. Angie will have surgery on the 6th. She was planning to be at church this morning, but was hurting, and hopefully on the 6th we'll take care of that problem. And Bob is having surgery on the 6th. So I'm going to have a busy morning. And so anyway, that's Thursday the 6th, and then I think that's everything. There's other things in the bulletin you can take a look at, but I'm tired of making announcements. We have some guests returning. We have a new guest with us, so I want everybody to make sure they feel very welcome. Why don't we stand and do that, okay?
as we sing this morning.
Finally, on Saturday, I heard from her, but all I got was her tithe check. Anyway, she's doing well. We're grateful for God's gifts. Let's thank Him for them. Father, we thank You so much for the gracious gifts You give us. And then at the same time, Lord, You turn around and allow us to participate with all You are doing in our midst. What a joy that is. It's my prayer, Lord, that it will be used in such a way that it honors You, reaches people for Christ, and spreads the good news like a wildfire through a dry forest. Father, we praise You for that You let us do that. And we ask Your blessings on it in Jesus' name. Amen.
Counts the stars, one and all. He knows how much sand is on the shore. He sees every sparrow that falls. He made the mountains and the sea, in control of everything, of all creatures great and small. He knows my name, every step that I take, every move that I make, every tear that I've cried. And He knows my name when I'm overwhelmed by the pain, can't see the light of day. I know I'll be just fine, 'cause He knows my name. I don't know what tomorrow will bring. I can't tell you what's in store. I don't know a lot of things. I don't have all the answers to the questions of life, but I know in whom I have believed. He knows my name, every step that I take, every move that I make, every tear that I've cried. He knows my name when I'm overwhelmed by the pain, can't see the light of day. I know I'll be just fine, 'cause He knows my name. He knows my name, every step that I take, and every move that I make, every tear that I cry. And He knows my name when I'm overwhelmed by the pain, can't see the light of day. I know I'll be just fine, 'cause He knows my name, every step that I take, every move praise team comes as we begin to worship this morning, I always encourage you to sing with us. I know it's hard to stand through a whole praise set sometimes, but I do encourage you to sing with us. This song is a very powerful song. I hope that you will sing with us, that you'll be blessed, and that you lift praises to the Lord this morning. Would you stand with us as we worship this morning?
Early in the
This is the air I breathe. This is the air I breathe. Your holy presence living in me. This is my daily bread. This is my daily bread. Your very word spoken to me, and I'm desperate for you. And I'm lost without you. Sing that again. And I'm desperate for you. Oh, cry out to God. And I'm lost without you. I'm desperate for you. I'm lost without you. One more time. I'm desperate for you. So lost without you.
Wow, brother, I don't know how to follow that. That's powerful. Sermon comes from the 15th chapter of the Gospel of Luke this morning. Not a long passage, but before we get to that, I want to tell you a story. I'll tell you a story about a woman named Edith who decided to come to Christ and how she found him. She had no use for church or religion most of the time, but she was lonely and she was empty and she knew it. So one Sunday morning, she walked into the worship service of a church not far from where she lived. She'd been out walking, heard the music inside, and went in and sat down in the back. The pastor was reading his text, which was Luke chapter 15, verses 1 through 2, and he was reading it from the King James Version. If you've never read this passage from the old King James Version, you ought to do it sometime. I'm going to read it in a minute from a more modern translation. But here is what he read, and you remember her name is Edith. Then drew near to him, unto him, all the publicans and sinners for to hear him. And the Pharisees and scribes murmured, saying, This man receiveth sinners, and eateth with them. And that's what it said. But what Edith heard was, This man receives sinners, and eateth with them. Now, she soon realized her mistake, but that thought stayed with her, that this man received even her. So that afternoon, she pulled out an old Bible that she had from somewhere in her home, and she began to read the Gospels. And before the day was out, she had read, before the sun set, she had read all 4 Gospels, Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. Quite a feat for somebody that's never read the Bible before. And that afternoon, she decided to draw near to him, and she gave her heart to Christ. The people of Jesus' day, the religious leaders, were scandalized because of the people Jesus hung out with. They didn't like it. It bothered them because these people were not the people of the up and up. They were not the right people. Jesus hung out with the down and out and the up and loaded. It didn't make any difference to him. No matter how far gone they were, he drank with them, he ate with them, and they were called sinful, awful people. In fact, it's still true that Jesus receives sinners, and you too. Following the observation by the Pharisees about Jesus sitting with the tax collectors and sinners, Jesus will tell 3 parables in answer to their problem about what it means to be lost and found. Before we read the text this morning, I need you to understand the Pharisees' viewpoint here. They label these people as people of the land. And they were not allowed to testify in court. Their testimony was not allowed anywhere because they were considered completely untrustworthy. To marry your daughter to one of them was, a Pharisaical saying was, that it was like taking her outside naked and tying her up before a hungry lion. They wouldn't go on a trip with them. They wouldn't travel. They wouldn't entrust any money to them unless they had to. And as far as they were concerned, they were despicable people and worthy of God's hellfire and brimstone. Down in Luke 15:7, Jesus will tell us that there will be joy in heaven over one sinner that repents. The Pharisees' version of that then will be, there will be joy in heaven when one sinner is obliterated. They look forward with great glee to the destruction of these people. You ever know anyone like that in the church that acted like that? How about, you're not going to bring those people in here, are you? I've heard that. Those kids come in and they ate all the donuts. And their mama just let them. That guy doesn't smell good. This guy doesn't do that. Don't worry, the Pharisees are still with us. Fortunately for the rest of us, so is Jesus. The text is in Luke 15, 1 through 3a. And I want to read it. It's real brief, so I'm going to let you stay seated. There's not any great truth in it. We're going to get to that in a minute. And here's the text that Edith heard, but I'm going to read it in the Holman Bible translation. It makes a little clearer sense, and you won't mistake your name for anybody in here. So, all the tax collectors and sinners were approaching to listen to him, and the Pharisees and scribes were complaining. This man welcomes sinners and eats with them. So he told them this parable. In answer to that, Jesus tells us 3 stories. Now, these are stories you've all heard. I mean, you've heard every one of them. You know them. You could almost tell them yourself. But I want you to look at them with a new perspective this morning. I want you to look at them from a new place this morning. I want you to see them fresh. And I want to show you 3 things about sinners being lost and found. The very first thing I want you to see this morning about God taking in sinners like us is that He pursues us in our restlessness. He pursues us when we are restless and wandering. There were a lot of tough jobs in the first century. I can't imagine living back then. Can you imagine living without electricity, running water? I know, some of you grew up there. I know. I heard that from my mother all my life. Those were the good old days. I can't imagine those being the good old days. I just really can't. I like air conditioning too much and running water and the bathroom inside the house and all that kind of thing. I like those kind of things too much for me to enjoy. That's why I don't do camping. Because that's going back to the good old, just, like I said, my idea of roughing it is a 2-bedroom condo without Wi-Fi. That's roughing it, okay? But being a shepherd was a hard job because it was a 24/7 job. It was an ongoing job. It was difficult. It was time-consuming. The pasture was scarce. The whole pasture land was up on a plateau in the middle of, kind of in the middle of Israel. And it was narrow. And and on either side were sheer cliffs, and it was difficult and tough, and a lot of times you were doing communal flocks. They would have 2 or 3 shepherds and a bunch of sheep from all the people in the village, and you took care of them, and you took them out, and you watched them, and you can imagine this guy. You're there, you're always watching, you're always waiting, you're always having to know where the next ground, the feeding ground would be, and you're paying attention. You're sitting there, you're armed, you're weather-beaten, you're tired, and you're waiting for the next thing to come along to try to separate you from your sheep. There were hyenas, there was wolves, there was bears, there was lions, and all of those were carnivorous, and they all liked mutton, okay? They just liked it. The shepherd was personally responsible for the sheep in his care. Even if one got away and died, the shepherd would look for it until he found it so he could bring home the fleece to show how the animal died. Okay? It was his responsibility. Again, when we see the story here where the shepherd leaves the 99, he's not leaving them alone. There are other shepherds there. This shepherd goes out looking for the one that is lost. Now, sheep, they will eat themselves nearly right off the side of the mountain. They will be right on the ravine, see a piece of grass down there, and hop down to get that, not figuring out how in the world they're going to get back up again. And I find that, and I made this comment before, and one day I'm going to ask Jesus about it. I really am. When I get to heaven, he may just let me know it so he doesn't have to talk to me about it because he's heard me ask him before. But don't you find it curious, and maybe just a little humorous, that when Jesus talks about his church and his people, he calls us sheep, and sheep are the dumbest creatures on 4 legs on the planet. They are just dumb. Sweet, cute, cuddly, but dumb. They'll just walk right into danger and never see it coming. That's why the shepherd has to leave the 99 and go looking for the one that's lost. Because it wasn't trying to wander away. It wasn't running away. It just wandered away. Eating, probably. When the shepherd would lose one, and he'd have to go looking for it, and the other flock, the rest of the flock would go back to the sheep pen or the sheep herd by night, and they would hear that one shepherd is out looking. The men of the village would stay up late. They'd sit around the fire waiting for the shepherd to come home. And when he would come home with that silly sheep around his neck, carrying it home because he didn't trust it to follow him, they would rejoice. They might throw a little party to celebrate the one that was found, because that was their livelihood, that was their income, that was how they survived. In telling this story, try to put yourself in the shoes of the Pharisees. Here they are complaining about Jesus, eating with the sinners and the tax collectors. Now, I wish Luke had filled all that out, because I go to commentaries and they'll tell you who they think the sinners were, but they don't know. They're just throwing it out there. Put yourself in their position, and Jesus says to them, those people I'm sitting with are like the one that went away and went astray. Jesus is saying that the reason he eats, sits, and visits with sinners like us is that God seeks and searches for those who are lost, like a shepherd looks for that sheep. They would have got that. They understood that. Many would write off the sinners like you, me, and others as someone who is no longer worth the effort to pursue. I wonder if there's anyone in this room who's ever felt that way. Like they weren't worth the trouble to go out and care for them. They weren't worth the effort for God to come looking for them. They weren't worth the effort that anybody would spend on them. Now don't get me wrong, God loves the faithful. He loves those who are faithful to Him. He loves those who remain true to their faith and trust Him. He does, and He appreciates all of that He can get, but most in His heart of hearts, this story tells us that when someone is lost, Jesus goes looking for them, and when that person is found, there is a party in heaven to rival any party on the face of the earth. to know this is still true, that Jesus goes and looks for and receives sinners just like us with great joy. The second thing he teaches us, and this is in the parable of the lost coin. Isn't it interesting that Luke put all three of these together? The second thing we learn from these stories is that God searches for us even in our lostness. To understand this story, you have to understand the coin in question. It was a drachma coin. It was a, let's see if I got the silver drachma coin. It originated with the Greek city-states and was still hanging around being used by the Roman Empire as coins. Why print more? Why mint more if you don't have to? And it's not worth a whole lot, but it is made out of silver, pretty much. It's hard to translate this coin into today's money because it just wasn't worth a lot, but still silver. The value of the coin was also relative to the person holding it. If that coin meant your family ate today, then it was worth a lot of money, wasn't it? But here's an interesting thing. Notice that Jesus tells the story. So the woman had 10 and lost one. When you got married, one of the things you saved for, a bride would save for before she got married, was enough money to purchase 10 of these silver drachma coins and make them into a headdress that she would wear on her head. She would rarely be seen in public without it. It was like wearing a wedding ring. She would wear it with great joy and great pride. And it was so much hers that even if she was in desperate debt, her creditors could not take it from her to pay the debt. It was hers. And it's interesting that this may be the coin. Because searching for it was no mean feat. You say, well, you think your house is dirty. Their house was covered with dirt. It was on a dirt floor. And then it had reeds. They would bring in fresh hay or reeds and lay it on the floor. And once a week or so, they would gather up all those reeds and sweep out the thing and bring in fresh ones. But here's what's going on. If she's looking for that coin, she's having to move all of that stuff, hoping to hear the metal cling against a rock or something, hoping to see it. She's looking desperately through the house for that ring. One winter, we took the kids when David was in his first set of treatment up to Maggie Valley. And they had snow tubing. Now, it wasn't snowing, they made their own snow, but that didn't stop David and Hannah. They wanted to go snow tubing. So I paid for the three of us because I had to tote David. David could not walk hardly. And I had to get him on the inner tube and get him on the tote ring, and I had to go up ahead and get him ready to go and then jump on and go up ahead of him. So that when he got up there, I could get him off the inner tube and get him over to where he was supposed to go, or pull him over to where he was supposed to go. So you see, 3 times more work for me. This is a grown man I'm toting around here. And then he would go down the slide, and somebody would have to be down there to catch him, which is usually Nancy. Okay? And so we did this, I don't know, for a couple, 2 or 3 hours, and it was cold. She had her gloves on and off, and finally I was just give out. And I think the kids were too. So we got in, we went back to where we were staying, and we were warming up around the fire with a cup of hot chocolate. And Nancy looks down, and her wedding ring set is gone. Now it was 3 rings kind of put together. That's what she's got on now. It was an engagement ring, a wedding band. All right, whoever pushed their button, there we go, thank you. Never did it, just thank you. Anyway, and it had a mother's ring in the middle of it with a lot of little diamonds, and then her wedding ring. Okay, put all together. And it's all sealed together. She looks down and it's gone. So we go back over there, we're looking, and it's almost dark, okay? It's just almost dark, maybe getting dark, and we're looking, it's New Year's Eve. That's New Year's Eve. And we're looking, the place is crowded, people are everywhere, they've turned the lights on, turned the snow machines on, and they got more people out there now than they had in the afternoon, and we're looking, and we don't find it. And there's a man standing there, and he says, what are you looking for? And I told him. He said, well, man, it's getting late, and I'm going to watch night service at my church, and I got a part in it, or I just go get it now, and I've got to go to that. But if you'll meet me back here at 9 o'clock in the morning, I'll get my metal detectors, and we'll find that thing, because nobody's going to find it tonight. So the next morning, we got back up there. Nobody turned it in. He hooked up the metal detectors, put on the headphones, gave me one, put on the headphones, I turned it on, and I walked right over where Nancy had been standing most of the night, put that thing on, turned it on, and go, beep, 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 beep. Reached right down, pulled the stuff away, and there it was, gleaming in the sunlight. A ring. Now, you say, well, it was just a wedding ring. Just like the bride in the story, her marriage would have been fine. If her husband really loved her, it wouldn't have made any difference. He'd have found a way to get her another coin somehow or other. And I'd have found a way to get her another ring, because I know that, because I'd already done it once before. And our marriage would have been fine. But I got to tell you, the joy I had when I slipped that ring back on her ring finger was just, I mean, it was just, you can understand what Jesus is talking about here when you think about that. The coin didn't do anything to get lost. It was just lost. And the owner searched for it. Jesus says this is what God does. No Pharisee in his right mind in Jesus' day would have ever imagined a God like that. The God that searches for those who are lost. The Pharisee might have agreed had a sinner or a tax collector come to God on his bended knee, walking on his knees on glass, and begged God to forgive him, that maybe, just maybe, God would have had some pity on him. But no, God, in their mind, would have gone looking for that which was lost. You need to know that Jesus is still there, looking and searching for sinners like us. I want you to know, say thank you. No, you got to have to do better now. I'll preach all 3 sermons. Say thank you. Thank you. You need to know that I could have preached a sermon on either one of these parables, and I could have preached 3 on the last one. In this story, there is the lost son, the loving father, and the self-righteous brother. They're all 3 there, and those are 3 different sermons, and I'm not going to preach them today. But I just wanted you to know that they're, and you know this story, you do most of it, but just to settle my own soul, let me hit the high points. There are 2 sons. The youngest one wants his inheritance. It won't be as much as the oldest one, but he wants his inheritance now. And basically he tells Dad, I want my inheritance before you're dead. Now that's cold. I mean, that's really cold. But I want it, and I want it right now. And so the old man gives it to him. And the kid goes off to another country, and he spends it all. He parties like there's no tomorrow. And he has a lot of friends as long as he has a lot of money. But when he runs out of money, his friends are nowhere to be found. He can't get a job. The only job he can get is feeding the pigs, and there's not enough money in that, so he ends up eating what they eat. Now, in a Jewish story, that's the lowest you can get. Not only are you feeding pigs, but you eat what they eat. And that's just as low as, that's the scum of the earth. That's worse than being a publican and a sinner. That's really bad. But he thinks, the hired servants in my father's house live better than this. I'm going to get up, and I'm going to go to my father and ask him to make me one of his hired servants. Now, I need you to understand that this is not like being a slave. This is worse than being a slave. It's worse than being a long-time servant. For a hired servant, and they made sure they said hired servant, can be dismissed at any time. A slave cannot. They were considered members of the family. That's a different viewpoint in that day, but that's how it was. They were considered members of the family. And an indentured servant, one that had served with the family for generations, they could not be dismissed. They were like, but a hired servant was paid by the day. And he could be dismissed at any time. And that's all the boy's asking for. But let's not make him the hero, because he's not the hero of the story. You need to know that. I don't even think this should be called the parable of the prodigal son. I think it should always be called the parable of the father, the watching father. Because every day that this boy has been gone, he watched for him. He knew it would do no good to go looking for him and try to drag him home. That would not work. So he waited and he watched every day. And when that boy comes down the road from the way he left, he knows that that's his son. And he runs to him, and before the boy can ever get his spiel out about being made a hired servant, the dad orders a robe be brought. The family ring, that means the family crest, that means acknowledging his position in the family, be placed on his finger. And the bull, the fatted calf killed, and the party begins because the son that was lost has returned. Here's what we learn about God in this story. When the father forgave his son, he did not make him a servant, but he restored him to full sonship in an instant. He forgave him with no recrimination and no provisions. You'll notice that you have to clean your room. That wasn't in there. You have to clean your room. You have to do your chores. You have to do none of that. You are forgiven. You are home, and that's all that matters. The boy didn't have to do anything to get his father's forgiveness. The only reason the father didn't go and get him and drag him back is he knew that wouldn't do it. So he waited. By the way, there's no indication that the father would ever bring the forgiveness up again. It was a done deal. All the boy had to do to get it was accept it. That's it. It is the wonder of the love of God that He treats us all like that, even sinners like us, when we come to Him broken and hurting. You ever gone on a long trip and lost your luggage? One time I was flying from Salt Lake City, and I flew, believe it or not, they flew me into Oklahoma. They were supposed to fly me straight to Atlanta, but they had a problem, and they landed me in Oklahoma City, Delta. And I changed planes, and then they flew me to Atlanta, and I was late. I was supposed to catch a flight and go to Jacksonville, Florida, and I was supposed to speak at a church down there and here there, and that was the nearest airport. And I barely made the plane. I mean, I rounded the corner running with my carry-ons, yelling, "Don't close the door! Don't!" Because Delta's got this thing. We close the door, we can't open it. Why not? The plane's still there. But, you know, they close the door. You know, something about a closed door. I said, "Don't close the door!" I handed her my boarding pass and ran on the plane. My luggage did not make it. The nearest hotel where I was going to stay was out on the beach, so I stayed out there. It was wintertime, so the prices were right, so I stayed out there. And I was supposed to leave early the next morning and go to my speaking engagement, but I had to wait. Delta finally, I don't know where my luggage went, but it didn't make it to Jacksonville, Florida. I had to wait for my luggage to get there. And what the strange thing was is, well, it had some other stuff in it. Anyway, got there, finally found it. But if you've ever been standing there at the airport and you have no toothpaste, no underwear, no clean clothes, all you got is the clothes on your back. And they don't know where your luggage is. They don't know. Well, it could be here, and it could be there, and it might be over there, but we'll get it to you. Will you really? Well, you know, that doesn't happen every time. You know, sometimes, did you know that more than 26 million people a year lose their luggage? 26 million people a year. And it doesn't all make it to their owners. You know how I know? Because there's a store in Scottsboro, Alabama you can go and shop at that is filled with people's lost luggage. Senior adult church groups make a day trip there to shop. It's the size of a warehouse. And it's filled with stuff. 60 Minutes has done shows on this. The day, whatever, all the news people, they've all done shows on this. It's amazing. So, you know, everything that's lost doesn't always be found. One day a guy walks up to the ticket counter and says, "Well, I'm going to this location, but here's what I want my luggage to do. I want the first suitcase to go to Phoenix, Arizona. I want the second to go to Seattle, Washington, and the third to go to New York City." The clerk says, "Sir, I can't do that." He says, "Why not? You did it last week." Sometimes in our lives, we feel like that man's lost luggage. We are anywhere but where we're supposed to be. You should understand that these three stories don't all say the same three things. They are telling us something different about lostness and the searching of God. And Jesus was trying to convey to these learned Pharisees and people like us that sheep don't mean to get lost. They don't. They're not that smart. They don't think about it. They just get lost. The coin did not lose itself. It was lost through no fault of its own. It was just lost. William Barclay, in his commentary on this passage, says that many people are led astray by others. And a wise man once said that God will not hold the man guiltless who leads others astray. The son, however, went lost deliberately. He deliberately demanded his inheritance and left. Here's the thing in all of this. The love of God can defeat foolishness, the foolishness of a strayed sheep. The love of God can defeat all of those voices telling us that God is nonsense and that the way to go is the way of the world, and even defeat rebellion and intentional lostness. One of the other things you need to see in all of this is not everything in these stories were lost. The 99 sheep were safe with the other shepherds. The 9 remaining coins were still in the headdress that the woman would wear. And if she did her hair right, maybe nobody would notice the one that was missing. And the other son was at home doing what he was supposed to be doing. Begrudgingly, but still there. Yet the shepherd, the woman, and the father were not content with what they had. They were concerned for the lost, and they searched diligently for them, even like God does with sinners like us. You think about that while we pray. Our Father, you are an amazing God. You pursue us